Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Director Wray, thank you for being here today, and thanks for your now 5 years of dedicated service to our country, and thanks to all of those 38,000, do I have that number right, men and women with whom you work who have also dedicated their lives to making our country safer. And I want to preface by saying I believe that the FBI is a law enforcement organization of preeminent skill, dedication to preserving our rights and liberties. And I welcome your condemnation of the bungling, I think was the word that you used, of the Nassar investigation. I was deeply disappointed. I remain angry that there was no prosecution of the two agents, not only for their actions in failing to pursue those allegations, thereby putting more young women at risk, in fact, more than at risk. They became victims as a result of the failure to investigate, but also then mistruths, untruths, lies to the OIG investigation. The declination of prosecution was infuriating to many of the survivors and victims, understandably, and to me. Were you consulted in that decision?
Well, Senator, as you may appreciate in your role as a former U.S. attorney, of course, prosecutive decisions are made by prosecutors over the department. They would consult with the investigative agency, but in this case, the investigative agency was the Office of Inspector General, not the FBI. My views on the conduct, in particular of the couple of people in the Indianapolis field office, their failures have been stated very publicly and frankly emotionally by me. And as you know, we, on our end, fired the one individual who was still at the FBI. So that's really kind of all I can say on that, I guess.
So do I take it you were not consulted on the decision not to prosecute, which, as you say, may be understandable because you were not the investigative body in particular for the potential lying to the FBI and prosecution of it?
Well, certainly my views about the agent's conduct and my views on what happened, or more importantly, what did not happen in the Nassar case were communicated in a variety of ways, including by me, to the department. But as to the prosecution decision or the declination decision, I'm not aware of us having any role in that.
Did you agree with it?
I'm going to respectfully decline to answer that question. My views on the agent's conduct are best reflected through my public comments and the action we took at the FBI.
Thank you. You have been very forthright and aggressive in condemning the incitements to violence, and I think you agreed with me when we last talked about it that you agreed that the most persistent and lethal threat to the homeland, and I'm quoting from the Department of Homeland Security, is domestic terrorism, violent extremism, white supremacy in this country from within. Is that still your view?
Well, close. I would put it slightly differently, but somewhat similar, which is that the greatest threat we face here in the homeland is from what are largely lone actors already here, largely radicalized online, who use easily obtainable weapons to attack soft targets. And a big chunk of those are domestic violent extremists. Another big chunk of those are homegrown violent extremists inspired by ISIS and jihad, but they're people who are already here and they have a lot in common. Of the domestic violent extremists, racially motivated violent extremism is responsible for the most lethal attacks that we've seen in the country over the last several years. And of the racially motivated violent extremism, the biggest bucket is those who advocate for the superiority of the white race. I will say that over the last couple of years, Another group within the domestic violent extremism bucket has really surged, and that really started in 2020, I would say, through the summer, and then continuing on to the present, and that's what we put into the category of anti-government, anti-authority violent extremism. Sometimes there's overlap, but it's different, and so that includes everything from militia violent extremism all the way to anarchist violent extremism. What they all have in common is a focus on institutions of government and law enforcement as their likely target.
What they want to do is tear down the government.
Correct.
Support insurrections like we saw on January 6th, and they are fostered by a lot of online communication using social media, correct?
Correct.
And what can be done to, in effect, counter the use of social media to incite that violence? And is social media, big tech, doing enough now?
Well, what can be done? I would say a couple things. Well, one is we are trying to encourage more people, just as they do in the physical world, we want them in the virtual world. If they see something, say something. If they see somebody expressing threats of violence, criminal activity on the internet, we want people to reach out to law enforcement and let them know so we can prevent an attack. So we need more and more of that. You mentioned the social media companies. We do try to work with the social media companies, and there are things that they can, and some of them do, using their terms of service, violations of their terms of service to take accounts down and things like that. But there is, I think, a phenomenon that we all have to recognize, which is that the social media industry, enjoys the ability to amplify and connect people, and there's good things that come with that, and there are bad things that come with that. And I think we would all be in a better place the more those companies can take more responsibility for abuse of their platforms.
I have one more quick question for you. Two of my colleagues, Senators Rubio and Menendez, have written, have taken action to try to gain extradition of fugitives that are presently in Cuba. I don't know whether you're aware of their initiative, but in the course of a report today in the Hartford Courant, I became aware that there are at least 70 fugitives from American justice in Cuba, but that a full list has not been made available by the FBI for perhaps decades. Is there a reason that that list hasn't been made available, and would you commit to making it available both as to Cuba and as to other countries where there are fugitives from American justice?
I'm not familiar with the specific list or issue that you're raising, so let me drill into that and circle back to you. I'm certainly aware of, in one particular case, an extremely prominent, most wanted terrorist who killed law enforcement in New Jersey. It's really something that strikes at the heart of all of us in law enforcement, who is believed to still be in Cuba. Certainly it's an issue that we feel strongly about.
Would you commit to, as you put it, circle back with me and provide that list? I see no reason why that list, which probably includes Victor Verena, who was responsible for the most significant armed robbery in Connecticut over the years, and perhaps in the nation up to that time, and provide, confirm and provide that list.
Let me follow up and find out what information we can provide. I'm not, like I said, I'm not familiar with the specific list or the issues that are implicated, but certainly I want to be as responsive and transparent and helpful as we can be.
Thank you, Senator Blumenthal. Senator Sass.
Thank you, Chairman. Welcome, Director.